This is Part 3, Episode 130. The top level of the Pilt Tower consisted of an extremely spacious and grand hall. Normally, the great heads of the Pilt Tower would only receive guests here when they were VIPs. At this moment, there were some figures randomly seated within this large hall that had been vacated for a long time. A female servant was respectfully pouring tea. Feng Zunja, it has been many years since we have last seen each other. You still have that free and easy manner. Xian Kongzi in the leader's seat looked at a green-clothed, old man with a smile on his face and laughed. The green-clothed, old man was naturally Feng Zunja, who had traveled non-stop from the Falling Star Pavilion after having received Xiao Yang's message. He merely shook his head and laughed after hearing Xian Kongzi's words. How can I be as comfortable as you, a great head? My Falling Star Pavilion is merely a small character when compared to the Pill Tower. There was a somewhat old-fashioned man was seated beside Feng Zunja. His body was rigid. It was as straight as a spear, giving one a kind of sharp feeling. It was as though the one seated was not a person, but a sword that contained a sharp aura. The old me has not left the Pill region for a long time. May I know who this friend is? Xian Kongzi's eyes slid to the old-fashioned man, as he asked with a smile. I have long since forgotten my old name. Subsequently, I have created a name for myself, Tai Jian Metal Sword. This old-fashioned man was polite to Xian Kongzi. He cupped his hands together, and his face revealed a somewhat ugly smile. Tai Jian. Could it be Jian Zunja, who washed the Jade Sword Gate in blood 5 years ago? Surprise immediately flashed over Xian Kongzi's face as he asked. The face of the old man Tai Jian moved a little before nodding. Clearly, he did not wish to linger on this topic for long. This old fellow's character is just like this. The enmity between him and the Jade Sword sect is too deep. It is difficult to explain everything in a short time. Feng Zunja laughed and suddenly swept his eyes over the large hall. He asked, Where is Xiao Yang? That little fellow has summoned me here. Don't tell me that he is not even going to show himself. What is old Feng saying? How can this member of the younger generation fool an elder like you? A soft laugh was transmitted from outside of the large hall when Feng Zunja's voice had just sounded. Immediately, a couple of figures pushed open the door and slowly walked in. Xiao Yang's eyes focused on Feng Zunja inside the moment he entered the large hall. He immediately sighed in relief. Feng Zunja was absolutely necessary for this operation. Therefore, Xiao Yang felt reassured after having personally seen Feng Zunja in the hall. 9-star Dozong. Feng Zunja swept his eyes over Xiao Yang. The teacup in his hand slightly trembled as he exclaimed in surprise. He clearly remembered that Xiao Yang had only just broken through to the Dozong class when they parted ways. How could Xiao Yang's strength soar to the 9th stars in a little over a year? The face of the stern-looking Tai Jian Zunja by Feng Zunja's side twitched a little. Some shock flashed across his calm eyes. Feng Zunja had told him in detail about the matters related to Xiao Yang. From the way Feng Zunja had spoken, it was obvious that he was extremely pleased with Yao Chen's disciple. Initially, Tai Jian Zunja had not been so sure about Yao Chen's disciple. However, now that he had looked over Xiao Yang personally, he finally sensed the hidden extraordinariness under this young face. I was merely lucky. Xiao Yang laughed as he walked into the large hall. The little fairy doctor, Qian Zunja, and the laser-looking Zi Yang followed behind him. This girl was extremely dissatisfied that Xiao Yang had brought her to meet these old people. Was it not better to allow her to sleep a little longer? Feng Zunja smiled. His eyes shifted before solidifying on the little fairy doctor, and Qian Zunja without moving. Tai Jian Zunja by the side also revealed a grave expression on his old-fashioned face. His eyes were staring intently at those two. Being an elite Dozun, he was able to sense that this elderly person and woman seemed to possess a strength that was a little stronger than him. Who are these two? Feng Zunja blinked his eyes. From the way he saw it, these two people seemed to have a deep relationship with Xiao Yang. Moreover, the thing that caused him to pay more attention was the strength of the little fairy doctor and Qian Zunja. From his senses, these two people had both reached the level of a 3-star Dozun. They are all my friends and will also be helpers during this operation. This is little fairy doctor, and this is Qian Zunja, Xiao Yang smiled and replied. Even with Feng Zunja's calmness, his heart involuntarily shook a little when he heard Xiao Yang's introduction. He had not seen Xiao Yang for slightly over a year, yet his strength had not only soared to the 9th star, but 2 powerful friends with the strength of 3-star Dozuns had appeared beside him. This rapid growth really left one speechless. He is indeed worthy of being a disciple who caught the eye of that old fellow. One really cannot judge him using common sense. Feng Zunja bitterly laughed in his heart. Over a year ago, Xiao Yan was merely a young fellow who had just entered the Central Plains. However, now he had already managed to make a name for himself within the Central Plains. News of that earth-shaking competition during the pill gathering had already spread across the entire Central Plains region. Based on Feng Zunja guess, it was likely that the expressions of the Wind Lightning Pavilion would be quite interesting after hearing the news. A Tier 8 alchemist guru was not someone one could offend. This is Tai Jian Zunja. He is also a helper that I have found. Some of our friends in the past withdrew after hearing that we are planning to oppose the Hall of Souls. I am also unable to use any force. These people have their own factions behind them. They are afraid they might anger the Hall of Souls and that they would retaliate by washing their factions in blood. Feng Zunja sighed. After which, he pointed at Tai Jian Zunja by his side and said, "This Tai Jian Zunja is alone and does not have any relations." Back then, he also owed a great favor to Yao Chen. Otherwise, he would not have been able to avenge his blood feud. He had taken the initiative to follow me when he heard that I was going to rescue Yao Chen. Xiao Yan quietly nodded when he heard this. It seemed that Feng Zunja had been quite active during this period of time. However, the Hall of Souls was too strong. Even Dozun class experts would not dare to offend them. Nevertheless, Xiao Yang's heart felt some admiration for this Tai Jian Zunja since he was able to step forward and lend his hand. Making a perfect situation more perfect might be unfortunate, but delivering help when it was needed was truly considered a treasure. Xiao Yang shall represent teacher, while thanking Tai Jian Zunja for his righteousness. Xiao Yang's expression was grave as he faced Tai Jian Zunja, cupped his hands together, and thanked him. The reason I managed to have my revenge was because of Yao Chen's aid. Now that I have taken my revenge, I do not have anything left to be worried about. As long as that old fellow can escape and allow me to return this big favor, barging into the Hall of Souls is nothing. I also wish to meet those fellows who are neither ghosts nor humans. Tai Jian Zunja's voice was somewhat hoarse as he spoke. Xiao Yang was silent when he heard the tone of this person, which appeared as though he had already tossed aside everything. The kind of people who could randomly toss themselves aside was the most terrifying. Fortunately, this person was standing on their side during this operation. Xian Kong Zi has already informed us about the news relating to Yao Chen. I have been finding helpers during this period of time, and did not notice that the Hall of Souls had already shifted Yao Chen's prison. Otherwise, we might have ended up alerting them if we charged to Ming City. Feng Zunja fondled his beard and softly commented. However, I did not expect them to transfer him to the Death Soul Mountain range. The terrain there is complicated since the cold fog is so dense. If they made a mistake and let someone flee into the deep mountains covered in cold fog, it is likely that even the Hall of Souls would have difficulty finding him. It looks like they are worried that Yao Chen will be rescued by someone. Xiao Yang slightly nodded. He said, "We do not have sufficient time. Moreover, we do not know if the Hall of Souls will receive some news and quietly transfer teacher away. If that happens, all of our effort will be wasted. We must indeed quickly resolve such a matter. Otherwise things may change if more time elapses." Feng Zunshi nodded in agreement. After which, he looked to Xiao Yang and asked, "When do you plan to leave?" "We'll leave tomorrow." Xiao Yang replied in a deep voice. Currently, all the helpers had been gathered. Adding Feng Zunja and Tai Jian Zunja, their group already possessed 5 Dozuns. Adding Xiao Yang's explosive fighting strength, they would be able to fight against 6 Dozuns. This lineup was already quite strong within the Central Plains. As long as no unexpected changes occurred, Xiao Yang felt a 70% confidence that he would be able to rescue Yao Lao from the hands of the Hall of Souls. Feng Zunja was slightly startled when he heard Xiao Yang's departure time. After which, he slowly nodded. He was similarly aware that this kind of thing should not be delayed for too long. Although leaving tomorrow might appear a little rushed, speed was important in a battle. They could catch the Hall of Souls off guard, snatch the person, and swiftly leave. By the time the experts from the Hall of Souls hurried over, they would only be able to stare at the situation. In that case, we will do as you say and leave tomorrow. Xian Kongzi was also startled as he looked at Xiao Yan and Feng Zunjia, who had swiftly decided the time they would act. He helplessly nodded as he stood up and said, "Since all of you have already decided, the old me shall wish all of you a successful operation. We'll receive old Xian's auspicious words." Xiao Yang laughed. A stern glint suddenly surged into his dark black eyes. He had worked so hard for so many years for this day. Now, it was finally time for him to act. "Teacher, wait for disciple. This time around, I will definitely rescue you from the hands of the Hall of Souls." When the first ray of sunlight cut through the darkness and landed on the ground the next day, a couple of figures quietly rushed out of the pill tower without attracting anyone's attention. They disappeared into the sky within a couple of flashes. Wind sounded on the top of a mountain outside of Holy Pill City. A couple of figures appeared from empty space before landing on the mountain peak. "Let's go." Xiao Yang counted them. His expression was instantly covered with stern seriousness. With a low cry, his body was the first to turn into a blurry black line that shot into the distant sky in a lightning-like fashion. After which, Feng Zunjia, the little fairy doctor, and the rest closely followed. The rescue mission had finally begun at this moment. The Death Soul Mountain Range was located at the northwestern region of the Central Plains. This place could also be considered one of the more dangerous places within the Central Plains. It was rumored that many big battles had erupted in this place a long time ago. An unknown number of skeletons were buried under the soil of the mountain range. Moreover, due to this place having an extremely dense natural cold chi, it had resulted in this mountain range being covered by a cold fog all year round. One's spiritual strength would even be affected deep within this kind of cold fog. A reckless person might even be trapped to death within this mountain range. The Death Soul Mountain Range was not very far from the Pill region. With the speed of Xiao Yang's group, they were able to reach it in around 5 days' time. After having begun their journey, Xiao Yang's group did not have many stops along the way. They basically continued traveling through the night and day. Under this craziness, the group had already sensed the surrounding temperature beginning to swiftly fall on the afternoon of the 4th day. "Are we about to arrive?" Xiao Yang raised his head. His eyes looked into the distance. There was the outline of a mountain range there. However, the exterior of the mountain range was covered by a layer of icy cold fog. Xiao Yang's tensed face relaxed a little as he looked at the mountain range, which appeared a little sinister under the cover of the cold fog. They had finally reached the Death Soul Mountain Range. With their target within close proximity, Xiao Yang waved his hand and slowly landed towards a mountain top within a mountain range. "We have arrived at the Death Soul Mountain Range. However, everyone should recuperate a little first. The traveling during this period of time has not been easy." Xiao Yang landed on the mountain top. He looked at little fairy doctor and the rest, who had closely followed behind, and smilingly said. Ziyang immediately sat down on the grass below upon hearing Xiao Yang's words. Her pretty face was filled with bitterness. The traveling these few days was really about to take her little life. "Is this the Death Soul Mountain Range?" Little fairy doctor lifted her eyes and looked at the mountain range in the distance that was covered by a cold fog. She softly asked, "Can we directly fly into it?" "No. The cold fog outside is still all right. However, the further one ventured into it, the denser it would be. If we end up losing our direction at that time, we will end up losing our way inside. Moreover, those cold fog possess quite a number of mysterious magical beasts. It will be very easy for us to be ambushed." Feng Zunjia looked into the distance and replied. "Moreover, this Death Soul Mountain Range has a branch hall of the Hall of Souls. No one can guarantee that they do not have some defensive precautions here. It is extremely easy to be discovered if we charge in from the sky. In terms of the familiarity of the Central Plains, it was likely that no one else present could be compared with Feng Zunja. Moreover, he was also extremely experienced and was far better than Xiao Yan and the rest in this aspect. Hence, no one doubted his words. All of them nodded instead. This current season can be considered to be the time when the cold fog of the Death Soul Mountain range is at its densest. However, we do not have the time to wait until the cold fog becomes thinner. Therefore, we can only enter with this fog. Feng Zunja narrowed his eyes slightly. His gaze swept over the Death Soul Mountain range as he said, "There are some smaller sects and factions around the Death Soul Mountain range. From what I know, most of these factions are controlled by the Hall of Souls. Therefore, we must not allow anyone to discover our trail when we enter. If someone unfortunately sees us, leave it to me." Tai Jian Zunja by the side spoke in a hoarse voice. Feng Zunja nodded quietly. This operation of theirs was really too important. Anyone who ended up knocking into them could only blame himself for being unlucky. Everyone recuperated for around half an hour on the mountain top. After which, they stood up in unison. They looked at each other and could see a seriousness within the other party's eyes. The strength of the Hall of Souls was something that everyone present were clearly aware of. It was not an easy matter to rescue someone from their hands. If this operation fails, it is likely that we will no longer have such an opportunity in the future. Therefore, no matter what, we must rescue Yao Chen this time around. Feng Zunja had a grave face as he spoke in a deep voice. Everyone nodded gently upon hearing this. Everyone should remain close after entering the mountain range. Be careful. Let's go. After saying these words, Feng Zunja took the lead to move. He became just like a large bird that glided down from the mountain top. After which, he rushed into the vast forest covered by a cold fog. Xiao Yan and the others followed closely behind. White fog covered the entirety of one site within the forest that was permeated by a cold fog. Visibility was extremely low in this kind of environment. Even if one used one's spiritual perception, one could only sense the area within 100 meters or so around. It was impossible to extend any further. The waves of low and deep monster roar that occasionally sounded within the forest that was covered with white fog suddenly had some slight rushing wind sound appearing. Immediately, a couple of agile monkey-like figures broke through the cold fog. They rushed forward and swiftly headed towards the deep regions of the mountain range. As they entered deeper into the mountain range, Xiao Yang and the others also gradually met with some trouble. The size of the Death Soul Mountain range was extremely large. Additionally, cold fog permeated the place. It was not easy to find the location of the Hall of Souls from within it. The map that Xian Kong Zi had given them was of some use initially. However, as they ventured deeper into the mountain range, the use of it became increasingly less. At the end, Xiao Yang's group could only rely on their own ability to gradually search this place. By advancing and searching in this manner, their speed was naturally reduced. Moreover, the thing that really caused one to feel depressed was that the effect obtained was not great. This season was when the cold fog of the Death Soul Mountain range was at its peak. Some of the indicators on the map were also destroyed by this cold fog. It was likely that Xian Kongzi and the others had not expected this. After advancing and searching for a period of time, Feng Zunja noticed the cold fog around them gradually becoming dark. He involuntarily frowned slightly and softly said, "Night will arrive soon. We cannot continue traveling." The magical beast within the Death Soul Mountain range are extremely fierce at night. Moreover, they are just like the maggots in one's bones and are extremely difficult to shake off. If any unusual movement was created, it would not only disturb the other magical beast, but it would likely also attract the attention of the experts from the Hall of Souls. Xiao Yang hesitated for a moment upon hearing this, but he could only nod his head. Feng Zunja's experience was far from what he could compare with. It was definitely right to listen to him. Feng Zunja made a hand signal to Tai Jian Zunja when he saw that no one had any objections. The latter nodded and swung his hand. Some black stuff rushed out from it and flew into the distance. These are the stool of some high-rank magical beast. It is able to stop some magical beast from disturbing us. Everyone should rest for tonight. We will continue searching tomorrow. The branch hall of the Hall of Souls will definitely be quite big. Although this mountain range is very large, it is only a matter of time before we find it. Feng Zunja softly comforted. Xiao Yang laughed bitterly. His heart felt a little depressed. Currently, they were fully prepared, but they were unable to find their way after arriving at the site. This was really a little comical. Although Xiao Yang felt depressed in his heart, he did not say anything. He sat down on a tree branch and slowly shut his eyes. The other people, who had traveled for so long, also shut their eyes and rested a little. The night of the Death Soul Mountain Range was exceptionally dark and cool. Various howls resounded within the mountains. This caused one to feel one's paws stand. Beast roars resounded for over half a night within the mountain range before gradually disappearing. Just when everyone were about to sigh in relief, they suddenly heard some shuffling sound being transmitted from the distance. Feng Zunja, who had his eyes tightly shut, suddenly opened them when these sound appeared. His eyes swept over the distant white fog. After which, his face changed a little as he exclaimed, "This is bad. It's the stone-swallowing ant colony." Upon hearing the exclamation from Feng Zunja, the expressions of Xiao Yang, Tai Jin and the rest also changed slightly. Stone-swallowing ant colony. It was a kind of extremely frightening magical beast within the Death Soul Mountain Range. This was not due to their strength, but because they possessed terrifying numbers that could amount to tens of millions. The fierce reputation of the Death Soul Mountain Range was partially as a result of the cold fog. However, most of it was because this Death Soul Mountain Range had a kind of magical beast. This type of magical beast was the stone-swallowing demon ant. This stone-swallowing demon ant was not of a high rank. They were merely rank 3 or 4. However, the frightening aspect of them was their numbers. This kind of terrifying ant tide that numbered to the tens of millions would swarm over from all directions. Even a rank 8 magical beast could only temporarily hide. Moreover, this kind of stone-swallowing demon ant could swallow any flesh and blood that blocked them. Anywhere within the Death Soul Mountain Range, where the stone-swallowing demon ant tide passed, would be covered with densely white bones. It was not possible to find even a trace of blood. Any expert who had accidentally entered the mountain range and meet this kind of ant colony would be no different from meeting certain death. If it was not because these stone-swallowing demon ant could only exist within the cold fog, it was likely that no one would dare to even live outside of this mountain range. The reason that the fierce reputation of the Death Soul Mountain Range would gradually spread over these years was largely credited to these terrifying ant colony. Xiao Yang's group had never expected that they would be so unlucky. They had met this kind of troublesome thing just after having entered the Death Soul Mountain Range. Prepare to withdraw. Do not engage in a head-on collision with these damn things. Feng Zunja quickly got up and spoke in a deep voice. Xiao Yang and the rest did not dare to slight the situation upon seeing the solemn expression of Feng Zunja. They hurriedly got up and were preparing to withdraw when a lovely little figure suddenly rushed down from the tree. After which, she charged into the forest that was covered by a cold fog. Feng Zunja's expression changed drastically upon seeing this action of Zi Yang. He involuntarily cried out furiously, "What is this girl doing? Is she seeking death? All of you should leave first. I will rescue her." Wait, the voices of the ants had come to a halt. Little fairy doctor's eyebrows were vertical as she suddenly said. Feng Zunja and the rest were also startled when they heard this. They listened carefully and did indeed realize that the shuffling sound, which left one's heart cold, had already completely disappeared. This? Just when Feng Zunja and the rest had a stunned expression, a lovely little figure rushed out from the cold fog without being hurt. After which, the one who appeared on a tree was Zi Yang, who had just ran out by herself earlier. At this moment, a half-a-foot large golden-colored 8-winged large ant was on her shoulder. Stone-swallowing ant queen. Feng Zunja's and Tai Jian Zunja's expressions immediately changed slightly when they saw that gold-colored 8-winged large ant. Yang merely laughed in face of the drastic change of the expressions of Feng Zunja's group. Let's go. This big fellow knows where the Hall of Souls is located. This video will end here.